Thank you very much for your attention, and let me start the last part of this 2 days conference, which will be something like the summary of the conference. I will very briefly introduce the modus operandi of this conference summary, as unfortunately Réka Kis, as a chairperson of the Hungarian Committee for National Remembrance, apologize for taking part in this discussion. We will make it in those way that my two colleagues will have a short speeches, something like the summary. Then I will say a few words, and we'll open the floor for your comments, remarks, and the last part will be some organizational issues, which will be said by Rafał Łatka. So we will start with my colleague, Dr. Beáta Katrebová, from the Nation's Memory Institute in Slovakia. I'm sure I don't need to introduce her. She has a very nice speech yesterday. So Beáta, the floor is yours.
So I would like to summarize, and in that way I have done some notices in my very short speech in some points. I would also like to pick up the similarities and differences we have discussed in our conference, and also some future research desiderata and achievements of the previous research. So the first point, we have recognized, let's say, the same patterns in the attitude of the communist regimes in the Soviet bloc toward the church. Which were the features of these common patterns? First of all, what was discussed in our conference, the politics of the forced division or split of the Catholic Church from the Holy See. In that way, also the establishment of People's Church, nationalization of the Catholic Church in the countries under Soviet sphere of influence. This was more or less could be seen in practically all countries of the Soviet orbit. And this measure was crucial and fundamental for the communist parties. First of all, because the Holy See was seen as the main or the strongest ideological enemy to communist ideology. Together with these thoughts, with these ideas, with these anti-church measures, we should also look at some characteristics of the pontificate of Pius XII. We have actually, I was awaiting a little bit more discussion about this pontificate, because in the scientific community, the pontificate of Pius XII is in the middle of the interest, is in the center of the interest. So perhaps we should mention some of these characteristics. So first of all, anti-communism. Strong concerns about the fate of the church behind the Iron Curtain. The efforts of Pius XII to maintain direct diplomatic relations as long as possible. This could be also seen as a kind of Vatican Ostpolitik sui generis. So not only Vatican Ostpolicy from the pontificate of John Paul XXIII, but we can speak in very general way also about the Vatican Ostpolitik of Pius XII. So to maintain the direct diplomatic relations as long as possible, we have seen a very good case of Nuncio Hurley in Yugoslavia. His mission ended in 1952. This was the last diplomatic mission of the Holy See. In the communist countries, in Czechoslovakia, the relations were broken earlier in March 1950. So these were only 2 countries from the Soviet bloc where nunciatures were opened after the Second World War. So in Hungary and Poland, there were no nunciators after Second World War. It was also very important after the breakdown of the direct diplomatic relations to have some communication channels, or to create some communication channels to get direct informations from behind the Iron Curtain in a situation where there were no direct bilateral relations. So this is also a very interesting question we did not touch. Actually, what was also important for the pontificate, and we could see it somehow in our discussions, delaying of the conflict between episcopate and governments, and the communist governments, as long as possible. This was the position of Pius XII until the end of 1948, when he realized that any kind of arrangement between the church and the communist governments were not possible. And the stronger position was necessary. From the beginning of 1949, we can see it very clear on the Czechoslovak case during the spring and summer 1949 in the so-called Catholic Action, and the attempts to split the church in Czechoslovakia, to divide it from the Holy See. So the Pope efforted to delay this conflict, but when it was not possible, his position was very clear. And in the same time, he started to prepare special measures, faculties, to ensure for the church to survive. So building secret church structures, we have talked about it. The second point I would like to touch, the genesis of the communist anti-church measures. So we could see that the year 1945 was a real turning point. We could see it very clear in the case of Croatia, when the first radical anti-church measures took part, not only in connection with the trial of Archbishop Stepinac, but also with the creation of the People's Church and so on, with the nationalization of church education. This was also the case of Slovakia, where the church schools were nationalized in the end of 1944, and then, of course, after the end of Second World War. So 1945, the beginning of anti-church measures, let's say, as the first point, and then it took over to other countries in the years 1945-1948. The Stepinac trial was the first from the very important trials against the church hierarchy, followed by Mincenti in February 1949, Slovak bishops who were convicted in January 1951, and this was only one case where 3 Catholic bishops were convicted in only one trial. So the case of Slovak bishops Gojdič, Vojtašák, and Buzalka. Nationalization of the education. So I have mentioned. The third point, we have seen a really big interest for the biographies of the, let's say, martyrs, the main representative of martyrdom, martyrium during the communism, biographies of the persecuted bishops and clergy. We mentioned the fate of Polish Cardinal Wyszyński, of Bishop Marton Aron, Bishop Gojdič, Latvian Bishop Dublinskis, and other clergymen and spirituals of the Protestant, Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox Church as well. And in the end, we see that the need for scientific biographies, so biographies in scientific meaning, are very important in historiography. So we have martyrs on the one side, but we have also collaborators on the other side. This question was only touched, and I believe it was mentioned during our discussions that there could be another conference, scientific conference, about the collaboration of the clergy and spirituals with the state security. Very important topic. And the last point, I have noticed Protestant Church. We have also discussed the special position of the Protestant Church, mostly on the case of Hungary. So we have seen that the attitude of the communist regime differed in this case. So the attitude towards Protestant Church or anti-church measures according to Protestant Church were a little bit others than in the case of Catholic Church. The Protestant Church should be misused as an instrument of the communist church policy of collaboration, but as we have seen in Hungary, this politics failed. So some points I have just only touched. Maybe there will be discussion. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Beáta, for your view of the conference and the topics. And please, Rafał, floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to present some topics on the conference, and of course, I will give you a short brief about Polish situation, and in this Polish situation, I will mark some comments about the general context of the Europe, of the countries behind Iron Courtain, because I think it is necessary to provide some comparison. We should probably, after this series of conference, started to present the compare studies about our main problems, like collaboration, as Beáta said, as a strategy of the bishops, strategy of the clergy, especially looking for the difference, because all of the countries have their own specific concrete situation, and this specific giving us communists possibility to introduce other solution in this country, because if we are thinking about this first decade of the communist dictatorship in the Europe, we can see some very strange methods to achieve their goals, because of course the main purpose of the communists was to destroy completely the churches and other denominations, to bring new people, new communist people without any roots, dependent in the church point of view, in the point of view which is not visible for the communist ideology. Because the other topic, when we should underline that the many communists couldn't understand how is to be a believer, how to be a person with religious grounds. So for the people who are the Communist Party leaders, who were the secret political police, in the secret political police apparatus, they couldn't understand the conviction of many people, beliefs in God, beliefs in the moral rules. So they using the style of thinking of the communists, and probably in many cases it didn't bring the success. I started in the thing that the beginning of the communist rule in Poland was very specific, because the anti-church offensive was rather much more later than in the other countries in the Soviet bloc. It was, of course, not dependent on the conviction of the communists, not in the ideological point of thinking, but the conviction that it is rather for the communists better to bring solution with the anti-communist underground, which was very strong in Poland. However, of course, this period of preparation of repression in Poland ended quickly and started in the 1947. But this date is much more later than in the other countries, where in 1947 in the some part of the Soviet Imperium, Soviet countries which are dependent from Soviets, the churches were destroyed to this moment. So we have to, I think, research more this group of priests who were official collaborators, because we should divide this perspective, that we have official priests who said the communist system is very good, the communist style of thinking, it could be managed with, it could be deal with the Catholic point of view, and there is some intellectuals who giving their false conviction about that, and we of course have these secret collaborators who are giving the opportunity to destroy the churches and other denominations in the middle of this institution. I think also that the Polish have a special situation after the April 50, after the agreement, because this agreement was very specific. It was the agreement between the church and communist state, which giving some rights to the church, especially bond with the Holy See. We don't have such an agreement in the other countries, such a conviction that is possible to regulate these relations by these special agreements, because the church in Poland was very strong in the 1950. The other difference between the Polish church and other churches, there is no trial, no big trial of the leader of the Polish church. It was only a preparation to a trial of the Primate Wyszyński. We don't know today why the communists resigned for this trial, because they are preparing to it. They tortured the main collaborator of Primate Wyszyński to giving them materials to the process. But the main factor, I think, that is in the Soviet Union started the new era after the Stalin death, and Khrushchev and his main collaborators probably giving the Polish comrades information that this trial couldn't be effective, because in this trial always it was the main purpose, not only to say that leader of this church were not especially moral person, but also to destroy all of the structures. I think that we should also thinking about this period between the death of the Stalin and the moment of the liberalization of the system in 1955, because in the many countries this moment of liberalization was totally different. In Poland, a church gets many benefits of this period, but in the Czechoslovakia, in the Hungary, it is not especially visible in the context of the policy to the church and other denominations. So we have another big difference between Poland, in the specific situation, and other countries which they don't get these benefits. The church cannot rebuild their structure, cannot be the part of the official life, because in Poland after 1956 church was in the official life, social life, in the normal position. In the 2 or 3 years it was a very big chance which Polish church effectively used to bring some new view on the social life of the Catholic Church. So it is totally different situation, and I think that in the conference in the next year in Bratislava, we probably should present this bigger difference between Poland and other countries, because it is when we are thinking about situation after 1956 in Poland and other countries, this difference is much more bigger and bigger, especially visible in the 1978, when the Polish Church was victorious after election of the Pope of John Paul II. So I think after our conference that is very good that we can meet with each other, present these very interesting elements of the repressions of the anti-church policy, and also what Beáta underlined, that we heard many information about martyrs. Because martyrs, it was not only a symbol, not only the person who are a role model, but the point of discussion we have in common in all of the countries. Because martyrs of the churches were everywhere in the Soviet bloc, in the countries which were dependent by the communist government. Thank you.
Thank you for your words. And I will be very personal because, you know, we meet now in the September 2023, but the roots of this conference are much, much deeper. And I remember the meeting when the ID was proposed by you, if I remember it correctly. And this meeting took place in the Budapest in the February 2020. And for my point of view, this meeting is very, I really remember it because it was the few days before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the meeting was originally scheduled to discuss the mutual cooperation between the Hungarian Committee for National Remembrance, our institutions, the Nation's Memory Institute, and the Polish Institute of National Remembrance. And of course, this meeting was due to the series of scientific conferences dedicated to the communist parties, which we started here in Warsaw in 2018. And we were very glad when Rafał opened the question that the conferences on the communist parties are really working, all this ID and all of our cooperation. So let's start the new type of the conferences to another topic. And he proposed to be the persecution of the churches. And we, as an institute, or maybe all of our institutions, consider it as a very crucial. And I'm really very happy that after the 3 years marked by the pandemic, we will be able to meet here in the Warsaw. And I guess that it was a very successful first step, very important for such a series of the conferences. So I can see also the comparison with the conference on the communist parties, which this year will take place in the Prague, and the next year will be the termination of this series of the conference here in the Warsaw. And of course, we will continue also with this series of conferences on persecution of the churches. And as was already said, the next year, hopefully, all of us will meet in the Bratislava. And what I would like to emphasize, because it was already said many on the subject of this conference, but I would like to emphasize really the international context of this conference. I mean, during these 2 days, there were the speeches and presentations dealing with the majority of the former countries of the Soviet bloc. And from my point of view, which was very interesting, and I was very glad that there were some contributions also from the Slovakia, for example, Croatia, Lithuania, Latvia, from the nations that during the period of the communism don't have their own state. But maybe even more important is this question for such a nations, because of course this religion was a very important part of their national consciousness, we may say, and very important part. So I'm really glad that many papers were from these now countries. Of course, during these 2 days, many topics were open, and as we were discussing during the breaks, many of these topics would be great to have the particular conferences on. They are very important, but still such conference internationally is a very good place to draw some comparisons between the development in the individual countries and also to outline the similarities in the development. So I'm really glad that we were able to organize evening or the conference like this. And of course, very important part of each conference is the networking. We consider it as a very important part of this event, and I am really very glad that the presentations, or I can meet here not only the very distinguished researchers, but also very nice people. And I guess also the discussions during the break, during the lunch, during the dinner yesterday was very cordial from my point of view. And from my point of view, I really enjoyed all the stay here in the Warsaw. So now we'll open the place for the final discussion. If you have some remarks, conclusions, ideas, everything, now the floor is open.
Many thanks for having a possibility to be here. And I only want one remark to the speech of Beáta, because she was mentioned this role of Reformed churches, as it was speak about it by Ms. Rákosi. And I want to say that at Czech part of Republic, it was like similar something, because of, I would mention only Mr. Rafał Łatka, which was a big person in international movement for peace of all these Reformed churches, and he was of a big interest just from Mrs. Kish because of his role. And during the war times in America, he has a lot of students there because he was immigrated, exiled at America at the war times. And that's after the Second World War II, after the 1948, he has a specific role, and with his all pupils, to be an instrument against other churches and Catholic. Thank you. I only just mentioned it.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, remarks?
One technical question: do we prepare a publication of a volume from the conference?
It will be part of the last speech of Rafał.
Yes.
And if there are no other questions or remarks, I will follow the words to Rafał for the last say and some organizational issues. And thank you very much for your attention, and hope all of us will see the next year in the Bratislava.
I now will answer the question of which Beáta answered. Of course, we are planned the publication. I will send you exact information about this publication, but the term is December of 2023, and the text should have 60,000 to 80,000 characters. So we wanted to present the topic of the conference in the wider publication, that not only based on the paper which are presented. It should be wider than our presentation. And now I would like to thank you all of the panelists who give us very new information about situation in their countries, especially anti-church policy. I am very glad that we can be here together, and I think that in the future we can collaborate and also take part in another conference, not only in this series which are planning in the 2024 in the Bratislava and 2025 in the Budapest. Of course, all of the panelists, all of the people who are there with us are invited to these events, and we are we want to continue our research about this problem. So thank you very much. I hope that all of the people send the materials to the publication, and that we will see in the next year in Bratislava. And I am very happy that in the some group of our panelists I will see in 2 weeks in the Alba Iulia. Thank you very much.